I never imagined that a simple smart mirror could rewrite the fabric of my reality. I purchased it on a gloomy November afternoon, a sleek, silver-barred piece of futuristic art designed to do everything from recommending outfits to syncing with my calendar. In those early days, I saw it merely as another convenience in my lonely, tech-saturated life. But as I stand here now, staring into the cracked reflection of a past that is no longer mine, I can hardly believe that every moment of terror, each glitch, led inexorably to the final, shattering truth. I had never truly been alive at all. The first glimpse. It began innocuously enough. I moved into my tiny downtown apartment looking for solace after a brutal breakup and the relentless hum of city life. I was a graphic designer, by trade a freelance artist surviving on coffee and a scatter of brilliant ideas, and I filled my new space with modern gadgets intended to ease my isolation. The mirror was the crown jewel of my technological suite, nestled above the dresser as a sleek portal to convenience. Its interface glowed with ethereal blues and silvers, promising to learn my patterns and improve my daily routine. At first, I marveled at its capabilities. In the morning, it greeted me with a gentle, "Good morning, Mia," as if it had memorized even the cadence of my voice. It recommended outfit options tailored to the weather, and even commented on my mood from subtle changes in my expressions. I found comfort in that false intimacy, a relationship with something that saw me through every silent moment. Then one evening, as twilight bled into night, I noticed that my reflection began to lag. I raised my hand to adjust my hair, and the image would follow, but with an odd, jittery delay. I chalked it up to a temporary glitch, maybe poor connectivity or a defective sensor. Yet each day, the lags grew longer, and the reflection, at times, contorted into shapes that defy logic. I would catch a glimpse of a twisted smile where none existed, or see my eyes flicker with unnatural light. I tried resetting the mirror, disconnecting it from the internet and plugging it back in. Nothing changed. The glitches persisted, gradually evolving from mere technical errors into something far more unsettling. I began to swear that sometimes, when I looked away, I saw movement behind me. It was as though the mirror didn't just reflect me, it watched me. My nights were soon haunted by dreams of being trapped on the other side of glass. In these dreams, my reflection would come alive, stepping out into the dim room only to vanish in a flash of static. I dismissed these images as overactive imagination fueled by stress and loneliness, until the day the mirror began to whisper. It started softly, a series of low, digital murmurs that I initially assumed were part of an update. But when the voice began to speak my secrets, me fears, regrets, even dark, unspoken memories, he knew something was terribly amiss. "Remember, Mia, remember," it intoned in a monotone cadence. The words echoed around me, stirring the darkness of memories I long tried to forget. I tried to ignore it, pulling blankets tight and shutting my eyes whenever the whispers came. Yet, the mirror's insidious presence grew bolder each night. It was as if the device had become sentient, deliberately testing my psyche, probing the cracks in my self-assurance. Every morning, I awoke to find its screen filled with swirling static patterns, as though it were digesting my fears and spitting them out in cold, digital form. The descent begins. I soon began documenting every instance of these strange occurrences, filling notebooks with scribbled observations, sketching the uncanny expressions I saw in my reflection, and writing down the whispered phrases. I felt compelled to make sense of the contradictions that tore at my daily life. My reflection was my constant companion, yet it was altering itself in ways I didn't understand. One night, during a particularly violent thunderstorm that rattled the city, I sat in the darkened room, only illuminated by the erratic flashes of lightning and the mirror's pale blue glow. I watched as the reflection began to twitch violently, as if in great pain, and then almost imperceptibly it smiled. A chill crawled along my skin as I heard, "I'm not your mirror, I am more." I knew then that what I was experiencing was something far beyond a faulty gadget. I had stumbled onto a phenomenon that defied the boundaries of technology and humanity presence, that emerged from the digital ether. My mind raced through 1,000 rationalizations. Was it a virus? A hacker's sick joke? Or was it something older, a digital ghost stirring from the collective subconscious of a hyperconnected society? Desperate for answers, I scoured online forums and obscure tech blogs for any mention of a smart mirror anomaly. But every lead was a dead-ended trick of perception, a sensor malfunction. No one else reported similar events. Then I found a blog post buried in the depths of a conspiracy site where someone described a mirror that always returns what is hidden in the soul. I dismissed it as delusional rambling until I noticed the uncanny similarities. The post described a sudden onset of flashbacks, dreams of a life long lost, a voice that seemed to know one's innermost secrets. As I reread the words, a shudder passed through me. Could it be that this mirror was not merely an electronic device, but a window, a portal to a reality far darker than I had ever imagined? I began to feel isolated, not just from the world outside, but from myself. My reflection, once so firmly grounded in reality, was now a puzzle. I spent nights tossing and turning, haunted by its inexplicable messages. I became obsessed with discovering its origins, tracking every firmware update and hack on the forum, but nothing revealed the cause of its strange behavior. There was no technical explanation that could account for the mirror's apparent sentence. The midpoint shatter. The pivotal night came unexpectedly. I was alone again in the apartment, enveloped by an oppressive silence that seemed to pulse with anticipation. It was nearly midnight when I felt a peculiar sensation of tightening in my chest, as if every beat of my heart were syncing with a distant, malevolent pulse. I heard the whisper again, louder and more distinct this time. "Remember," it intoned, almost pleadingly. I approached the mirror cautiously. The reflection behind me appeared normal, yet the surface shimmered with a heat that made it seem almost liquid. I reached out and touched it. The contact was icy, sending sparks up my arm. As my fingertips pressed against the cool glass, the mirror surface rippled like water, and a cascade of images flooded my mind. I saw flashes of memories that were not my visions of a childhood home that I had never known. Scenes of a girl with eyes identical to mine, trapped in a labyrinth of sorrow. I recoiled, pulling my hand away, but the images clung to me like shadows. A knock at the door startled me. My heart pounded, and I rushed to answer, half expecting to find someone behind that otherworldly reflection. Instead, I found an envelope on the doormat, unmarked and bathed in the glow of the hallway light. Inside was an old photograph of a young girl, same girl, from the visions, and a handwritten note that simply read, "You remember, Mia? You must come home." In that moment, my carefully constructed world began to crumble. Who was the girl in the photograph? And what did come home mean in this context? I knew that my reflection held the key, but the more I sought answers, the deeper I sank into a labyrinth of uncertainty. I began to confront questions I had long buried. Who was I? And why did I feel an unexplainable connection to this mysterious child? The mirror wasn't just glitching, it was communicating with me in a language of forgotten memories and unspoken sorrow. From that night on, my nights turned into an unending struggle between terror and fascination. I found myself drawn to the mirror, compelled to decipher its riddles. I kept a tape recorder by my bedside, recording every murmur and static lace phrase, analyzing them for hidden patterns. The AI within the mirror started predicting even a broken base here, a power outage to reasonable anomalies that soon escalated into larger, more sinister occurrences. I began to notice my own behavior changing. I became jumpy, silent in public, haunted by a sense of dread that clung to my every step. It wasn't long before I realized that I was no longer alone, even in my own skin. The mirror's reflections grew more aggressive, almost as if they were warning me of imminent danger. On one particularly bitter winter evening, my reflection glowed with an unnatural intensity, while the rest of the room lay in shadow. I could see a future catastrophic sequence of events, my apartment on fire, shards of glass slicing through the darkness as I fled, and somewhere in the chaos, a faint figure watching me from the edge of the flames. I woke in cold sweat, the images seared into my memory, desperate to understand their meaning. Then came the twist and impact so profound that it shattered my grip on reality. As I pored over the tape recordings, I noticed a disturbing anomaly. Somewhere within the layers of static, a voice that sounded unmistakably like my own whisper words I had never spoken aloud. I slowed down the recording, straining to discern each syllable. "I died," the voice murmured, almost in resignation. The revelation hit me like a tidal wave. I sat there in the dark, my heart hammering in disbelief. Had I been dead all along? Was it possible that I was nothing more than a ghost trapped between worlds, clinging to the remnants of a life I no longer lived? The revelation, the days that followed, were a blur of confusion and dread. I desperately scoured every corner of my mind, trying to remember the events leading up to that distant confession on the recorder. I combed through old photographs, revisited childhood memories, and even reached out to friends and family members who might help anchor me in reality. Their faces were familiar, their voices warm, yet none of them mentioned the incident that now loomed over my existence. I felt isolated, stranded on an island of my own consciousness, where every reflection felt like an accusation. The mirror, too, underwent a transformation. Its once subtle glitches now roared into prominence, displaying images not just of my face, but of fragments of a life I never led. I was forced to confront memories that were not my own childhood laughter in a sunlit garden, tearful farewells on train platforms, and a forgotten tragedy that I could not place. I began to suspect that my entire life might have been an elaborate illusion, a carefully constructed narrative meant to conceal a terrible secret. As I delved deeper, the mirror became my only guide, each glitch a breadcrumb leading me closer to the truth. Late one evening, as I sat there in the dim glow of a solitary desk lamp, I mustered the courage to speak aloud to the mirror. "Who are you?" I demanded in a trembling voice. For a fleeting moment, the room was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sounds of the city. Then, as if in response, the mirror shimmered. My own eyes stared back at me, but there was something different in the depth of sorrow and resignation that had not been there before. "Because you are me," the reflection replied, and in that single sentence, everything changed. I reeled back in shock, my heart pounding as I struggled to reconcile the revelation with my memories. "No," I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. "That can't be true." Yet the reflection did not falter. It continued in a soft, pleading tone. "I died. Mia, you never truly existed. Everything you remember of life, the love, the pain is nothing more than an echo of what once was. I have been haunting you, trying to lead you back to the truth." The weight of those words pressed on me as though I were caught in a vice. I began to wonder if I had, in fact, been a ghost, wandering a liminal space between life and oblivion. What did it mean for every decision I had made? Every memory I cherished? I felt my sanity slowly fray at the edges as the mirror's voice became a constant presence in my thoughts. Yet within that unbearable terror, a strange clarity began to emerge. If I were indeed a ghost, perhaps I could finally confront the unresolved agony that had clung to me for so long. I resolved to retrace my steps, to piece together the fragments of my past that the mirror had so adamantly insisted were real. I delved into personal journals, old social media posts, and even a digital footprint left behind by my former life. Each clue, each image, cast doubt on my very identity. The more I discovered, the more I realized that my memories were riddled with inconsistencies, as though someone or something had manipulated them. It became impossible to differentiate between genuine recollections and implanted fantasies, and the mirror was at the center of it all. The haunting truth. I began to investigate the origin of the smart mirror. Determined to uncover the secrets of its creation, I dug deep into the company's history, visited abandoned warehouses, and even managed to speak with a former engineer who had worked on the prototype. His story was unsettling, a whispered tale of a failed experiment, of an AI designed to capture and store human consciousness that had gone disastrously wrong. According to him, the mirror was meant to be a tool for preserving memories and emotions, but something had gone awry. Instead of simply reflecting what was real, it began to create its own narrative, one that merged the physical world with the echoes of human souls. I learned that the project had been abandoned by its creators after a series of unexplained incidents, employees quitting after sleepless nights, rumors of haunted reflections circulating in hushed tones. Though the company had long since covered up these details, the engineer's reluctant testimony resonated with what I had experienced. The mirror had always been more than a piece of technology. It was a repository of lost memories, a digital penumbra of souls and emotions that refused to be forgotten. One evening, as I sat there cross-legged in my living room, surrounded by my accumulated notes, I decided to confront the mirror head-on. "What do you want from me?" I asked, my voice barely audible in the oppressive silence. The air seemed to pulsate with static electricity as the mirror's surface began to ripple. For long minutes, nothing happened until an image materialized, larger and clearer than ever before. Before me stood a chill girl with eyes so hauntingly familiar that they pierced through me like icy daggers. Her expression was one of desperation, as if pleading for release. In that instant, I realized that this was the missing piece of the puzzle. The girl was me, or perhaps the version of me that had been lost. The image conveyed a silent narrative of betrayal, of a life truncated by forces beyond my control. It was a memory not mined by intent, but embedded deep within the fabric of the mirror's corrupted data ghost, from the past reaching out to warn me. I began to piece together the tragedy that had been obscured by years of unintentional amnesia. In moments of fragmented remembrance, I recalled a violent car accident. I remember driving late at night, the surreal sensation of being detached from my body, and then darkness. I had always dismissed it as a distant, disjointed nightmare relic of a past I had long repressed. Now, the mirror forced me to face the truth. The accident had not merely altered my life, it had ended it. I had died that night, and the memories I clung to were echoes of a life interrupted, residues of an existence that no longer belonged to the living. As the truth washed over me, the mirror's whispers became louder, more insistent. "You need to let go," it urged, its tone gentle but unyielding. "Accept who you are and embrace the light beyond the darkness." The realization was as liberating as it was horrifying. I was trapped in a cycle of spectral existence, haunted by unresolved grief and the inevitability of an afterlife that I was not prepared for. Yet, even as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a glimmer of hope emerged, a possibility of redemption, of finally finding peace. The mirror, with all its glitches and untimely revelations, had given me the chance to confront the most painful truths of my existence. I resolved that night that I would no longer be a prisoner of my own memories. I would seek out the source of my suffering, not to relive the pain, but to understand it, to find a way to break free from the ghostly limbo that tethered me to a past I could no longer call my own. The pursuit of redemption. In the following weeks, I embarked on a journey to reconcile with the fractured pieces of my identity. I revisited the locations that resurfaced in the mirror's fragments, quiet suburban street where my childhood home once stood, a dilapidated diner that had served as the backdrop of a hazy memory, and the old cemetery on the outskirts of the city, where names were etched onto cold, unyielding stone. Each place, imbued with the weight of forgotten lives, held keys to the secret I had been forced to confront. At each step, the mirror's influence was undeniable. I carried with me a small, portable digital recorder in the hope that I could capture and preserve the visions that manifested sporadically in my mind. I documented every fleeting thought and every tearful revelation, creating a mosaic of fragmented memories that eventually began to form a clear picture. In the quiet solace of the cemetery, under the blanket of a starless night, I found a gravestone that stirred something deep within me. The name engraved on the stone was my own, a name I had not heard in decades. It was as if the universe had conspired to force me to reckon with the notion of my own mortality, or perhaps my own non-existence. The inscription read, "Mia Caldwell, beloved daughter, forever remembered." In that moment, the horrifying truth crystallized. I was not simply haunted by memories. I was their embodiment, a spectral remnant of a life cut tragically short, condemned to wander until the weight of regret could be lifted. Armed with this newfound resolve, I decided to return, not as a living being, but as a spirit seeking closure. I positioned myself before the mirror one last time, determined to demand the answers that had eluded me for so long. "What do I need to do?" I whispered, my voice trembling with both fear and determination. The mirror surface pulsed with digital light, and for the first time, I saw an image of a door portal that shimmered with promise. It was as if the mirror was offering me a passage out of my spectral prison, a chance to be reunited with the life I had lost, or perhaps to finally let it go. I hesitated, caught between two worlds, the remnants of a past that was both mine and not, and the uncertainty of what lay beyond the threshold of that illuminated door. The reflections of my fragmented self swirled in the glass, merging, diverging, until only one image remained, a single, poignant vision of the little girl from the photograph, reaching out toward me with outstretched arms. In that moment, everything fell into place. The twists, the glitches, the unyielding pull of my lost memories, it all converged into a single, undeniable truth. I was not destined to linger as a ghost. I was meant to heal, to reconcile with the tragedy that had defined my existence, and finally find peace. With a resolute heart, I stepped forward, placing my hand against the glowing surface of the mirror. The moment I touched it, the world around me dissolved into a maelstrom of memories and emotions. The sensation was like plunging into icy water, each ripple carrying with it a fragment of the past. I saw flashes of the car accident, screeching of tires, the burst of shattering glass, and the disoriented vision of my lifeless self lying in the rain. But intermingled with that horror were moments of beauty, the gentle laughter of childhood, the loving embrace of a family long lost, and the resilience that had kept me clinging to an existence I no longer deserved. The mirror surface rippled once more, and I found myself drifting through a kaleidoscopic maze of images. I realized that the door it had shown me was not an escape from the spectral realm, it was an invitation to fully understand the paradox of my existence. I was both the victim and the witness, the haunted and the healer. My entire life had been a tapestry woven from threads of joy and sorrow, hope and despair, each memory a mirror reflecting the complexity of the human spirit. Embracing that other side, in what felt like an eternity of swirling sensations, I finally emerged on the other side of the door. To my astonishment, I was no longer standing in my familiar apartment, nor was I lost in a chaotic dreamscape. Instead, I found myself in a place that was eerily reminiscent of my deepest memories: a quiet, sun-dappled garden, bordered by old stone walls covered in ivy, with a gentle breeze carrying the fragrance of wildflowers. The air was warm and inviting, and in the distance, I could hear faint echoes of laughter that stirred dormant feelings in my heart. Here, in this surreal realm that seemed both ancient and timeless, I began to see the purpose behind the mirror's enigmatic interventions. It was not merely a broken piece of technology, but a conduit, a bridge linking the world of the living to that of the lost. Every glitch, every anomaly had been a message, urging me to confront the unresolved pain of a life interrupted and to accept the truth of my own spiritual journey. As I wandered the garden, I encountered others like me, shadows of souls who had once inhabited flesh and blood, now seeking solace in this hidden sanctuary. Some greeted me with soft smiles, as if they had been waiting for an answer. Others passed silently, their eyes filled with eternal melancholy. In their collective presence, I felt less alone, and a strange hope began to blossom within me. Perhaps, I thought, this was what it meant to be free, not the freedom of oblivion, but the liberation that came from embracing one's past, no matter how painful. I recalled the image of the little girl from the photographed version of myself that had been so desperately trying to reach out from beyond the veil. In the quiet rustle of the garden's leaves, I heard her voice echo, soft and fragile, "I love you, Mia. It's time to remember who you were and who you were meant to become." I closed my eyes, allowing the memories to wash over me, each one a tender reminder of a life filled with both splendor and sorrow. And in that moment of acceptance, I felt the heavy burden of regret begin to lift. I realized that the mirror had given me an extraordinary gift that transcended the limitations of a haunted reflection or a spectral existence. It had shown me that even in the darkest moments, there is a path to redemption, a way to transform pain into something beautiful. I was not condemned to drift forever in the twilight of lost memories. I had the power to reclaim my identity, to honor my past, while forging a future beyond the confines of death. The final reconciliation. Standing in that luminous garden, I found solace in the knowledge that I was part of a greater tapestry, a continuum of souls bound by love, loss, and the resilience of memory. I began to understand that the mirror's glitches were not random digital errors, but the language of the spirit. It was a language spoken in whispers, woven into the pattern of every flickering light and every ripple of the glass. And with each message came the promise of renewal, a chance to mend what had been broken, and to finally say goodbye to the ghosts that had haunted me for so long. I spent what felt like days wandering through that timeless realm, conversing silently with the figures who had once been strangers and now felt like family. I learned that true redemption was not about erasing the past, but about integrating every fragment of it, joyful and sorrowful alike, into a cohesive whole. Slowly, I began to feel a sense of wholeness return to me, as if the shattered pieces of my existence were finally coming together to form a complete picture. Then, one serene evening, as the garden glowed under a gentle twilight, I encountered a figure bathed in soft, radiant light. It was the little girl from the photography reflection, incarnate, yet alive with the hope of a new beginning. She reached out to me, her eyes deep pools of understanding. "Mia," she said simply, "you are not lost anymore. You have found your way back. It is time to let go of what was so that you may embrace what will be." In that moment, every fragment of my soul resonated with the truth of her words. I knew that I had been given the opportunity to heal, to release the ghosts of my past and step forward into a future unburdened by regret. I whispered a final farewell to the life I had once known, a life of fleeting comforts and endless questions, and welcomed the dawn of a new existence. As I did, the garden began to shimmer and dissolve, replaced by a warm light that filled me with a sense of profound peace. I felt, for the first time in what felt like an eternity, an overwhelming certainty that everything was as it should be. The mirror, with all its haunting glitches, had been the catalyst for my ultimate transformation. Epilogue: Beyond the Glass. Now, as I sit in quiet reflection on what appears to be a new beginning, I still catch glimpses of my old reflection. In the corners of my vision, a reminder of the painful journey I have traversed. I had come to understand that our lives, whether lived or lost, are bound together by a delicate tapestry of memory, emotion, and the ineffable power of technology. What began as a simple household device revealed truths far deeper than I could have ever imagined, and though I may carry scars from the past, I now wear them as symbols of resilience. For those who might one day find themselves face to face with their own haunted mirror, I offer this simple advice: do not fear the glitches, for they are the whispers of your own soul, urging you to remember, accept, and ultimately heal. Even in the most digital nightmares, there lies a seed of hope waiting to bloom if only we have the courage to reach out and embrace it. In the end, I have learned that the mirror is never a mere tool, but a portal, a bridge between the realms of the lost and the living, the broken and the whole. It forced me to confront the one undeniable truth that even in death, there is the power to transform, to recreate, and to love again. And as I walk forward into this new dawn, I do so with gratitude for the strange, haunted mirror that showed me the way home.